What is up? It is Brandon with DIY Sound Library here. Today I'm talking with Masila Mike Muli. This guy's awesome. He has his own recording, engineering, studio business. He creates his own music. He's an artist. He has so many visions and goals and creative aspirations with his business with Elysium Creative Group. I really want to share this with you guys and show you what's up. Check it out.
I assume like sippy sounds every now and then isn't a big deal.
No, it doesn't matter. It's whatever.
Cool.
Conversation. I mean, it's good to finally like meet you. I know we've kind of talked over Facebook, but it seems like you're doing a lot of stuff with music, which is to me really inspiring. Can you kind of just go over like your background and what you're up to?
Yeah, I guess I can start with my background. There's I guess like a whole lot with that. I was born into like a musical family. I'm Kenyan. I'm from Kenya. And my father is he's a min or he's in ministry. Right now he's a educator, like he's a professor, but in different points of his life, he's been like a reverend, pastor, and stuff like that. So I actually grew up singing in like church settings because my dad would always have us going around, sort of like a family band sort of thing.
Like
Um,
the Jackson 5?
Almost like the Jackson Five, but like
Yeah.
gospel edition, and the
Nice.
parents are there too.
Nice.
Um, it's one of those things that, through the years was like super embarrassing at certain points. At other points was like really
Yeah.
cool. But the older I get, I'm really grateful for it because I had a really good sense of pitch and harmony and how to create music
Hmm.
with other people from an early age. And I was fortunate enough to be working with musicians who knew what they were doing, in this case, my parents.
Yeah. Yeah. That's sick. That's actually one of the things I was checking out with your music with Vivify, I think, right?
Yeah.
I just love the vocals on it. Like they're so smooth.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, again, that really just goes back to the fact that I was fortunate enough to cultivate that in the earlier years, and then later on in life, I was because I had such a solid foundation with the voice, and then also just like my ear, um, spreading out to musical instruments, and really committing to developing proficiency with that was um, a lot more possible for me because I already knew how to sing relatively well by the time I was like 5, 6 years
Hmm.
old. Um, so then that's when I committed to getting like the guitar specifically. Well, actually, to
Yeah.
backtrack, piano was my first instrument. Parents made me do it, kind of thing. Wasn't too into it, but my dad and my mom and most of my dad's brothers and all of my mom's brothers play guitar, and it goes back several generations to the point where it's
Hmm.
not even like your typical guitar anymore, just because like how time works, right? So I was really really into the guitar and I wanted to
Yeah.
learn how to play that. um so when I started playing the guitar, that's when I stopped doing sports. That's when I stopped doing like any other extracurriculars. It was just like all music, all in. um which is, yeah, it's something,
Wow.
especially looking back on, I'm really, really grateful that I had the certainty in that to really be like,
Hmm.
as a seventh grader, I'm not doing anything else with my free time besides homies and music.
Wow. That's like really dedication right there. That's hard for a lot of people to say, which is probably why you're so doing well with all these things you're doing. So,
Yeah, I definitely would say a plan that I was really set in is one of the saving graces in this process, because life is it works in seasons, as people often say. You're not really going to be the same person year to year. And the weird anomaly that I was set on the same goal and it's been consistent is
mhm.
is yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it seems like to me that just kind of shows where your sense of purpose is, and it just comes naturally from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you really hit the nail on the head with the purpose thing. I really don't really quite feel like I'm fully or accurately expressing myself in really any other context. What I really find to be so valuable about music is the way it can convey emotions. I call them second degree emotions. There's no like educational or
Yeah,
scientific backing behind that term, but it's just that, there's still certainly emotions, but they're not as straightforward as
yeah,
happy, sad, or even like melancholy. It's so much more complex than that. Um, like I often will liken it to when a parent or like a mother is dropping off their child for the first day of college, like in your typical like American family situation, right? When the parents are driving away, that emotion is not necessarily happy. It's not sad. It's sort of a more gray area, but at the same time, you could say that
right,
all
right.
those emotions are being engaged with at different points and different times, right? And music often has that same quality in what you experience listening through something, like such strange chemical and hormonal uh, engagements and dynamics and stuff as you're listening to music, and it's just so powerful. Like that's why um, I love just pulling out a guitar and playing for people and
Yeah, yeah.
changing the vibe in a room with that alone.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I feel like that's the one thing that makes all of us as musicians um, really love our craft. And I feel like it's actually what makes people good at what they do. It's that sense of purpose and getting out that inner emotion.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
I feel like it's hard to be good at music if you can say that if you don't have that, if it's just robotic and like bland, it won't
Right.
come across as organic. That's what I think.
I had a I had a jazz band professor in high school, Mr. Hood. Shout out to Mr. Hood if he ever sees this. And his thing was he always emphasized that technical proficiency isn't about like speed or even how much music theory you know, but rather about being able to
Yeah,
effectively express yourself. And I think you were like totally hitting the nail on the head as far as what the appeal is to music and what a lot of like great music and inspiring musicians have the ability to do, like to accurately express these complex dynamics going on in the head, like whether it's
right,
like a solo or a well-written song. It's just so fascinating.
right, right. And kind of transitioning to my next point, which is a lot of us kind of like DIY musicians and artists and bands. We start off as these musicians at heart, right? Like we know how to play the guitar or whatever and create music.
Hmm.
But a lot of us kind of transition into the audio world where we now learn how to create records and record and produce and mix and master and all that stuff. And I feel like, you do a lot of that. So how did that play into your life and
Yeah.
how'd you get there?
How'd I get there? Yeah, great question. So I in high school, there were a lot of up and coming like rapper types that I was friends with. I'm sure you had a similar experience, right? Like, yo, come through to my basement. I have like a two-channel interface and a laptop. Let's go. Um, yeah, and I was one of the
Yeah, yeah.
few guitarists that people knew of that wasn't just doing like the
Yep,
whole like
yep.
rock thing. I was I was happy and authentic and venturing into jazz and stuff like that. Like it wasn't just because my teacher made me.
Hmm.
Um, and so because of that, I was often getting invited to these environments just because people wanted guitar on their beats and stuff like that, like original guitar, especially if they didn't want to just put on SoundCloud. Um, so as I was finding myself in those rooms more and more,
Right, right.
um, I eventually just got curious about what's happening on that side of things. And like pretty much the minute I put hand to computer and helping with like produce beats and stuff, I just started to see how awesome it is going back to that whole like as a medium of expression to be able to not only like to have virtually anything at your fingertips at that point. With the realm of digital music production, it ultimately just comes down to your imagination and a little bit of what technology you have, but it's predominantly just
Right.
your imagination and the
Yeah, yeah.
possibilities
Yep.
that came with just totally recontextualized music to me. And also, like, for a while, I remember I was not really as into the guitar because I was just like, man, like, people have been playing the guitar for over 100 years. Like, I don't like, I'm over this. Like, we know what that sounds like. And there's just so
Yeah,
many
yeah.
other sounds to be explored.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Eh,
Go ahead. Yeah, I'd love to hear what you were going to
no,
say there.
no, I was just gonna say it's actually really funny. A couple of years ago I got into hip hop like really heavy. But I played guitar and I was like, no one's putting guitar on hip hop beats. Why don't I just do that? And I had this like,
Yeah.
I almost had like this company set up where I was literally getting paid to do guitar tracks for like hip hop artists. I was working with this group out of Trenton and like things like
Yeah.
that. And it was crazy. It was cool to like blend those styles
Yeah.
when you play like an organic instrument and they're kind of programming beats, and it's like this nice mismatch.
Yeah, the blending of the realms and all that. It's interesting
Yeah,
you
yeah,
call it organic instruments. That's I never really thought of it that way, but that's certainly what they are.
yeah, yeah. Um, and so
Uh,
you have your group, Elysium Group. Is that how you say it?
Elysium
Creative
Creative
Group.
Group.
That's
Yep.
awesome. Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that? Because I'm really curious what that's about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it may make more sense linearly if I kind of continue with what we were talking about with production,
Yeah.
and I think it'll work its way to that
Sure. Sure.
in a with a narrative you can follow. So yeah, when I started producing in like later middle school, early high school, it was only a matter of time before I started to realize that that's really more of a tangible way to be a creative person for a living. Um, and it was also at that point that I started to get serious about business, in that I just found
Hmm.
entrepreneurism to be appealing to me. I took a couple like business classes, um, and talked to people who I hadn't talked to musicians, but I just talked to entrepreneurs in different fields and gotten a sense like, if I really go into college
Hmm.
with a plan and I'm set on executing it, then it is actually like tangible. Um, and it was around that same time that I started to get keen to the music industry as an actual market. And I was starting to see the role that consumers play
Hmm.
compared to the musicians, and then also we have producers and labels and all that stuff. And I started to think more consciously about
Hmm.
like, well, where do I fit into all this, considering what I want to do and also what I want to be able to do. So it really came down to facilitating something that I can grow with, and and also and also that is kind of like revolutionary, considering the certain flaws or mismatches that I was observing with 21st music or 21st century music consumption. And I'm sure you're
Hmm.
wondering what I mean by that. To go
Well, I'm curious, like what are those flaws, you know?
Yeah, like a
Like,
lot, I call it a mismatch more so just because the industry is operating on obsolete models, especially with distribution. We definitely have streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music that have emerged over the past couple of years, which is definitely a much needed adjustment to the emerging technologies and how they changed music
yeah.
consumption, right? But the problem is that it's only been uh, minute adjustments year to year. It's kind of like you're you're in a situation that is not working for you, but instead of completely removing yourself from that situation and setting up something that's beneficial and sustainable for both sides, it's just bit by bit trying to identify
Sure.
what's the immediate problem now, let's change that. What's the immediate problem now, let's change that. And you may get to a point wherein it's sustainable, but by then shit will probably change again. Technology evolves much faster than the human brain and society, right? And it's really about adjusting to those things. And how that goes into with ECG is that when I went to college,
Hmm.
I went into it with the idea of developing some type of music distribution platform for in a way that's functional and more, or not necessarily functional, but more sustainable considering 21st century consumption trends, right? In other words, you can stream a song
Yeah, it's right there.
whenever you want at the whim. If you hear it on the radio, you just Shazam that shit and you can get that earworm satisfied within minutes. Now, if it's 1965, you hear a song on the radio, you better write that down or memorize it, and then you hope that you're lucky enough to tune in when they play it again, or you hope that your local record store, if you can get there, right, has um, has that in stock, and that just makes for a completely different sense of value for
Hmm.
music. Now there's good, now there's like better or worse. It's
Sure.
just drastically
Right.
different.
It's like that instant demand
Um,
almost diminishes the value of it, um, which is interesting because I never really thought about that, but it's so true.
yeah,
Like that instant gratification just lowers the value immediately.
yeah, and oh, I mean, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
and that's why so many artists, you're finding that they need to diversify in order to make the same amount of money
Right.
or to continue growing,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
why we see those trends in
Uh-huh.
marketable musicians. You know, the musicians that can get sponsorships and
The 6 9s.
collaboration deals. Yeah, the 6 9s, the Katy Perrys, all that
Hmm.
stuff.
Yep.
Talented in their own right, and in some ways, right, depending on what you're honing in
Yeah.
on. But ultimately, what they're really valuable, what their value really comes in, is that they can be sold and
Hmm.
monetized in ways beyond the music consumption vacuum, which in and of itself, right there, exposes the
Right.
problem. Yeah.
It's not about the music.
Um, so yeah, like my
Right. Yep.
long-term goal with ECG is to use that to develop this distribution platform. Um, and the way and the reason I started ECG and how it looks right now is by looking at other industries that have introduced groundbreaking means of distribution that disrupted the market,
Mhm.
and analyzing their decisions and how they set themselves up, and thinking about how can I come out with a bigger splash and also operate on my own terms going up to
Right.
that point.
Right.
One of the major players that I looked at was Netflix, or rather, just that whole world of like television, or even just like multimedia, right? Or what? Can you help me out with the word that encompasses movies and TV? I'm trying to think of like
Uh, Geez,
the
I don't
best
know.
term here.
Yeah. Entertainment industry.
Entertainment, like
Multimedia. Yeah.
yeah. Um, I was gonna say yeah,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean. Just like anything having to do with TV and movies, we've seen such drastic evolutions in that and changes with consumption habits
Hmm.
due to the introduction of platforms like Netflix, and that subsequently led to what a lot of people are referring to as the streaming wars
Yep.
right now, with like Disney Plus, HBO, all those cats coming into the market. Um, and I was looking at Netflix really as a model for what I can anticipate, you know, assuming things go exactly as planned, right? We would come out to the market with this breakthrough distribution model, um, and hopefully it catches on, right? But here's the difference between Netflix and what I'm looking to do. Instead of coming out with nothing but the service, I'm building up by having my own catalog and means of producing, marketing, and facilitating music internally before we go public with this distribution platform, which is like basically an app, right? Um, so now so like imagine if Netflix came out the gate with their own production studio and means of making Netflix originals. They would have cut out so many so many participants in as far as like the middleman, right? And then also snipped a lot of expenses. They would have had the means of coming out the gate with exclusivity and stuff like that. So that's really why ECG is structured the way it is right now. It's
Sure.
I'm looking at it to be on the short term a production company that has non-binding
Mhm.
agreements with our artists as far as like artist development, and then we also do marketing, and through that, we've been able to expand to non-music stuff, but that's just more like a side hustle kind of thing. But the real end game is to be able to roll out this app while also having an already established means of producing, marketing, and sharing music internally by having our own label.
So it's a better way for artists to get heard, really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow,
And
that's cool.
that's really what I'm really trying to set up for down the line. Like it's something that really works for indie
Mhm.
musicians, um, and the whole range. Like even higher up musicians, it's got to be sustainable. That's really the key term because there's no real model right now that is consistently sustainable in the music industry as far
Mhm.
as distribution.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
really about bringing that value back to the music.
Bring the yeah, dude, facts, facts. If that
Yeah.
ends up being the slogan, you'll get your 10%.
That's funny. And one of the really cool things I've noticed on the website is you have a lot of people who have joined this movement.
Yeah.
So how did you grow that team?
Yeah, well, to put it bluntly, it's really just through nepotism. You know, I always look out for my homies first and foremost, but I'm also the type of person who's always looking for more homies.
Mhm.
And originally, it was us informally putting each other on. A lot of their earlier members are like Swiss Army knives in a production sense, similar to me in that, you know, you need to play guitar, do that. I need you to do mixing. I need you to run sound for this show. Like you can jump around all that, even like beyond guitar, like whatever instruments, that kind of thing. And it allowed for us to um, really engage in a whole bunch of affairs. And the real key to that was just being equally as marketable as your middle-aged
Mhm.
competitors because we already had kind of like the coolness factor going for us. And that went like a long way, you know, like if we're the ones doing a movie night and we're like throwing on some like actually fun music and we have the
Right,
energy to
right.
like get engaged with the crowds and stuff, like they're gonna call us back. And then as we started getting more uh, what's the word, profitable, quote unquote, with the music production aspect, we were able to start building relationships with more specialized individuals like session musicians, um, or videographers, and stuff like that, which which really brought it to the
Wow.
next level because then now we just had freelancers on call for not everything but a whole bunch of things, and it's just a matter of
Right.
of of making of identifying the compatibility.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. I know, at least for me, it's hard to find band members. So starting uh, some kind of business or side hustle idea with people who, fuck with the vision, but also are good at their craft is tough.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is tough. I don't know how I happened to just know all these guys from the jump. Part of it is also just because of the circles I operated in. Um, you know, producers are often going to meet other producers, or if you overhear someone at a party talking about
Mhm.
like the beat they're working on, that will can easily lead to some type of working relationship.
Right, right. And kind of, I guess, talking about value, it seems like you found a way to actually make money from this music stuff. Um, However much may be, it doesn't really matter. But a lot of bands are kind of stuck in this rut where they might produce an EP or two and like they see nothing from it. And
Yeah, and then they
and it's just kind of dead from there, and they don't see a point in moving forward. So how do you break out of that? Because it seems like you have all these different methods that seem to work, and are moving forward in a
yeah.
successful way.
Hmm. Yeah, well, great question. So I would say like first and foremost, for so okay, let me actually first step out before I get specifically into uh how I made the music profitable. Um, I can maybe work my way up to how I got there, because there were points
Sure.
where the music was not profitable and I was still
Right.
making it anyway.
Yeah. It
Um,
always starts. It always starts that way.
yeah.
Yep.
So I initially I started out with a good amount of assets that I was using for mostly like corporate jobs. Like I had mentioned a movie night earlier. We started doing like videography for like small like
Hmm.
meetings, sound for symposiums, random things like that. And that's much more reliable in that symposium's going to be every couple months. If they have like an annual picnic, we can bank on them hitting us up for that annual picnic
Hmm.
year to year, unless we really mess up. Um, and then there was like wedding season. I was initially like really down with playing music at weddings, but I eventually
Hmm.
pulled myself back to only doing sound at weddings and the occasional DJing, just because like I just don't do,
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't like to be a human jukebox, especially under those circumstances. Um, but those are the kind of things that were reliable sources of income through ECG operations, while I was also like begging my friends, dude, can you come in and just like engineer for this one session or whatever. And then similarly, like identifying certain people that I just wanted to put on and get some music out there for the sake of having that like initial catalog to send out and
Hmm.
demo to people. Um, so that was really what gave us that cushion. And then when I brought on my homies Brent and Brian, they're the two guys who do management at ECG. They really helped offload more of that administrative stuff that was super not sexy, and I wasn't into it. So like the cold calling, cold emailing, following up with clients, keeping them happy, all that stuff, they started to take over, and it just like grew exponentially. You know,
Hmm.
we would get maybe 10 to 15% um, responsiveness, not to even say it would close a deal, but like 10 to
Sure.
15%
Yeah.
responsiveness on outreach. But if they'd be reaching out to upwards of like 30, 40 people a day. So that's still a solid uh, prospect base,
Mm.
you know? Um, and that was my approach to building a financial cushion before, and then we could like
Right.
invest in some musical projects that subsequently yielded returns. And then also we got to a point where we started working with artists that just, were broke. And that's always great. Um, and and then now, or not now, but eventually the as things started to get more sustainable, that we pivoted to crowdfunding. Um,
Hmm.
and what I mean by that is like really seeking out the people close to or close to like a specific artist that 100% sincerely and
Yeah. Yeah.
authentically
Yep.
believe in them. Um, a lot of people will just think about their family at first, mom, dad, siblings, the random uncle who used to play guitar and wants to like do it vicariously through you or
Wow.
whatever. And that is a good place to start if you're willing to actually do the paperwork, identify what you need and why, and reach out to the people that want to support you
Hmm.
with numbers and a plan. You'll be surprised what they're willing to do. And that has been a approach that we would
Hmm.
take with a lot of our artists uh, with a lot of our artists that are in our development program. We would help them crowdfund, and we're looking to expand that in a bigger way. Actually, it's the first time I'm publicly talking about this, but we're going to be
Sure.
rolling out like a premium ECG membership, kind of like Patreon, if you will. wherein everyone involved in the collective, as well as affiliates and associates, and that just refers to people that I bang with, but they have like their own thing going on to the point where like they're not around that much, but they'll gladly participate in certain things, right? So we're gonna be rolling out this platform where people can subscribe and support, like directly support people and artists that they that they're passionate about supporting, and that's looking to really pool it all together so that we can continue to facilitate more long-term and experimental projects and get those artists that don't quite have that startup capital off the
Mhm.
ground without us having to take like significant risks.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's cool. That's good advice too. Like any artists or bands listening, it's like have that plan in place, like you said, like just like what
Oh
you
yeah.
had, and don't be afraid to put in the work and ask around and even cold call or cold email people just
Mm-hmm.
to, whatever it is your goal is, just to hit that goal because it seems to work if you put in enough work and you have a decent
Yeah.
plan. At least you'll get something out of it.
Exactly. And you really hit the nail on the head with planning,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep.
Um I always tell people whenever they're asking me like, "Oh, like what do I got to do? What's the first step?" I Google a business model. Look that shit up. Print it out. Make sure
Yeah.
you understand what that all means
Mhm.
and fill in the blanks. When you do, after you have a general idea of what you want to do, then you can synthesize that to
Mhm.
an actual like document and presentation. Not only will that help prospective support bases or whatever, or prospective investors, which is really what they are,
Mhm.
that also helps you because you know what you're trying to do. It's so easy to forget or to be caught up in all the possibilities of what you can do that you don't even know where to start.
Right. Yeah.
But it's important to like just make some decisions. There's a million things you can do, right?
Mhm.
But you got to make some decisions and hone in on a plan. And eventually you'll get to the point where you can do all the things you want to do. Um, but it starts with something more
Yeah.
specific and honed in that you can build on.
Yeah. Yeah, I found myself in that position a lot where I know I have so many options and I like them all sometimes, but I need to make a clear decision what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
or else it never accumulates into anything. It's pointless. So
Right.
having that vision, that plan, like you said, is really helpful.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Like day
yeah,
to day, I used to always struggle with like conditioning as far as what to do. Like, do I work out today? Do I practice guitar today?
yeah,
But if you have a week by week plan that's spread out and even, or not necessarily even, but fits your goals, then you can
hmm
accomplish all of that. Practice guitar 4 days a week, exercise three, and then like do some days where
hmm
you do both or something, right? It is possible when you're so overwhelmed with options, you can lose track of what to do.
yeah, and it's good too because you don't have to think. Like you don't have to worry about nothing. It's there. The plans. It's
It's
it's right
there.
in front of you. It's just do it, execute
Mm-hmm.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I'm really curious, how has it been during COVID-19? Because this is like your passion, your livelihood. How has that changed things?
Yeah, man. Right. Well, so when it initially hit, I gotta say I was like totally rocked because everything just immediately shut down.
Mm,
I had some really exciting stuff coming up as an artist, and then also with the company that just totally fell through. I was fortunate enough to be doing this subcontract with this company, George Blood, doing like NPR uh, or doing digitization for reels, but the project I was doing was NPR.
yeah, wow.
And it was really fun, really relevant because it's like from their archive. Um, and it gave me a lot of reliable income through that. So I was really, really lucky. No, like there's no black or white around that. I just happened to be in the middle of that contract when the pandemic hit. All of my other projects pretty much fell through or were suspended besides that. But that gave me a little bit of a financial cushion to like meet my expenses to close out March. And then fortunately, with how how significantly expenses were cut. Uh, we Even though we were losing a lot of potential
Mhm.
income, the lack of
Right, right.
expenses made it survivable. And it really doesn't go past survivable. Um, but the real adjustment started to come with a couple weeks ago. I actually started to reassess the ECG business model because the the model I've been working on I had written in 2017 when I finished college. So then I was thinking to myself, now's a good time to um,
Yep.
work, like apply my experiences to my business model and work it out to something, that's better, just to put it objectively. And in doing that, trimmed a lot of fat in day-to-day operations, um, the type of jobs we were looking for just by looking at
Hmm.
like what type of clients we were bringing in. I was realizing like maybe you don't need to put so much effort towards prospecting for like X and Y when we can just leave it that if someone hits us up for it, we'll gladly do it, but we don't need to put the effort towards doing it. And really, I was just doing mixing and random like digitization and restoration gigs that came across as I could manage it. But then as I was reworking the business model, I started to think more about the long term. Um, and like with the app that I was mentioning earlier and developing
Hmm.
ECG as a multimedia, like full scale multimedia entertainment company slash studio or whatever that can create that has the capacity to create whatever content we would later push through the apps, right? um and that got me thinking more about big money and investors and stuff like that. So that's really been the big part of this next chapter for ECG, in that we're now trying to seek out like actual like bulky investments so that we can start hiring programmers
Wow.
and stuff like that, and like
Yeah.
econometricians, lawyers, all that fun stuff, so that we can really start to get it off the ground. um so it's really exciting stuff, and it just goes back again to what I was saying with you got to have a model and you got to be able to know how much money you need so that you can ask people for it and they feel confident in giving it to you. And sure, some of it is close friends and family, but the bulk of it is uh, past clients in the corporate sense and banks, investors, startup funds, things like that, that we're looking at um, and pitching them these ideas. We've been putting a lot of effort lately into refining the like the different divisions or subsidiaries of ECG that we were looking to roll out. So there's going to be like the streaming service. There's something. The working title is ECG Entertainment. That is a collaboration with my good buddy Eric Bussart. We grew up, well, not really grew up together, but when I moved to Pennsylvania, he was one of the first people I met, and we've been homies ever since. That was in like 2004, so we were totally still kids. Um, but he's a phenomenal artist. I totally recommend you look him up. And also, if you're looking for anyone to do your album art, you will not regret it. He does all my artwork, like he did Vivify 1 and 2, and all my past stuff, which are all paintings. If you, by the way, and it's insane uh, the accuracy and precision, but it's also like super abstract when he wants it to be.
Wow.
But anyway, I'll stop hyping up my friend. But yeah, so him and I are
Hey,
doing this
fine. Please
venture
do.
called
Please do it.
yeah, called ECG Entertainment. And with ECG Entertainment, we're looking to roll out a TV show and a comic book,
Wow.
both of which, like, we're not looking to independently produce. We're trying to generate enough crowdfunding to get for the TV show a reel, like a 5-ish minute reel, and then we need to develop what's called a pitch Bible, which is basically what you present to like major studios when you're like, yo, buy this show, kind of thing.
Wow.
Um, and then
That's big. That's really big.
yeah, man. I mean, it's one of those things like if we really are able to get it to a point where it looks clean, and the only real obstacle right now is the money because I have plenty of people um that can do it. We just need to be able to be like, yo, put in 40, 50 hours this week, which of course would have to call for
Right.
money because no one's gonna like because we have shit to pay for, right? Like no one's gonna be able to put that much time and sincere effort into it
Right.
unless they can be paid. Um, but yeah, that's what we're looking to do with the TV show, and that's more my brainchild. It's just kind of like one of those things that hit me one day, um, and he's like been helping me with like storyboarding and all that stuff. And I have a homie Nick who has been he's the only writer that we have on board right now, but he's just been doing like random what are they called? Uh, let me scratch my brain. There's a term for this. Treatments. He's been doing random treatments for like the for like dialogue and as like as
Uh-huh.
far as like
Wow.
how it reflects the character types and all that stuff. So it's all really super exciting stuff. And then um the comic book is Eric's brainchild, and I'm just really trying to just
Wow.
facilitate it because it's awesome, and I want to do what I can to help make it happen. And he's got, he's been working on this for years now. Like just he just kept getting like random character ideas and story ideas, and he didn't really take it seriously. But I was just talking about it one day, like, dude, like you have enough to at least do like 3-4 pages, and with 3-4 pages we can do some sort of crowdfunding campaign, and hopefully like that'll be enough that we could try to either develop that initial first issue to sell to some type of like bigger
Mm-hmm.
studio, or with comics, that's actually something we could independently produce because it's just ink,
Yeah.
not that much drawing. And he would be totally happy to do that as part of his living if it came down to it. He's a fantastic illustrator.
Wow. I mean, I just love that gigantic vision that you and your group have with everything.
Yeah,
I find that like missing in a lot of people. Um, I see it I see it a
for
little
sure. The
bit in
vision.
myself, but I feel like I could think way bigger than I currently am. And to see that coming from you and your group is really inspiring, honestly. Like
Yeah, thanks,
uh,
man.
going for a TV show, like straight away, like who cares? Like let's just go for it because we have this plan in place. It's awesome, you know. It's cool. Yeah, it's like how does that come about? Like how do you even think of these things? You know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it really so the the inspiration is always authentic. Like I'll just be like chilling with homies and something will just come to mind and
Mhm.
it's like, yo, this is dope. Sleep on it. Maybe it's like worth pursuing, right? But there does come a point where you have to decide how serious am I about making it happen, and am I willing to put in the work and all the super unglamorous aspects of bringing it to fruition. And
Yep.
that's the real difference.
That's
Um,
what a lot of people are afraid of is the
yeah,
work.
they
You
they they miss that too. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people, like what you were saying with vision, right? Like while some people, you like you were saying, there is a lack of vision. There's another kind of trend that I observe where people have a vision, but they're missing everything between where they are now and where
Yep.
they want to be. It's just sort of like it's gonna happen if I just keep like working on
Mhm.
music and nothing else. But there's way more to do than
Mm.
just being a musician
Right.
or working on music. Um, a lot of I call them talkers, not doers. You feel me?
Yes.
So
That's my new thing. It's like so much people are just talking. I do
yeah.
it too sometimes, but
We all do it,
uh,
dude. Like
yeah, yeah, like everyone does it, but it's just always good and efficient and productive to back yourself up and actually do the work, you know, make it happen, you
yeah.
know? If you're gonna say
Yeah, man.
if you say you're gonna make this album, like actually do it. Like put like
Mm-hmm.
work on it. Like
Yeah,
wake
dude.
up
I
early, get this shit done, Like that's all it takes is just that effort and then it usually can happen.
It's interesting you said wake up early. There's so one of the major influences, not sonically, but psychologically for Vivify was this project Early Riser by Taylor McFerrin. You ever heard of Taylor McFerrin?
No, I haven't, no.
He's really dope. You should look him up. He's part of the Brain Feeder Collective, which is the collective with like Flying Lotus, Thundercat, all those
Oh
guys.
shit, wow.
Um, yeah, it's really dope. And Taylor McFerrin is Bobby McFerrin's son. Like he's a little song
Oh
I
yeah, okay.
wrote. That dude. Yeah, yeah. Um, and he's really dope. Generally, you should check him out. But this record, Early Riser, it was his debut project. He made it over across like it was like 4 years, which is just totally not my vibe. Like the problem with doing that is
Yeah.
you're a different person by the time that shit rolls out. But he it's called Early Riser because he made that project. He wrote and recorded it really really early in the morning. He would wake up at like 5 a.m. most days
Hmm.
and then just get to it, like have like a breakfast and then get to it. Um, and when I read that article and then I listened back to the music, there was just something about how fresh it sounded. And I don't mean fresh like it's like new, but fresh like this, like it sounds like someone has a lot of energy. It's not up tempo, but like you feel in the morning, you have energy, but you're still mellow.
Yeah. Yep.
It's very much that vibe, and it's so clear headed in the execution and
Hmm.
production. And I think that's just because like he's coming from a place where he hasn't been polluted by whatever that day has to
Hmm.
bring him. He's fresh off of several hours
Hmm.
of complete rest, which is
Yeah.
arguably better than meditation, right? Like you are like out. And I found it's just so not okay. I don't want to say easy because that'll mislead some people, but you can get into a groove a lot more effectively um, if you're doing stuff like that. Like getting like I really would encourage anyone who listens to this like try that out one day. Like wake up at like 5 a.m., get a good breakfast, and like smoke a bowl if you need to work and then like try recording some music, try writing some songs. It'll be very different than if you're doing that at 7 p.m., 10 p.m., or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I notice when I wake up and work on shit, I am just like 10 times more relaxed and I'm just so chill about it. My mind feels clearer.
Yeah,
Um, I would assume that would help so much more.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. That's pretty much everything I have. I mean, if you want to talk about anything else or you have any other questions or things you want to mention.
Um yeah, I mean I'm curious if you could just tell me more about this podcast. Is this like what number episode are you on? What was the inspiration, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, this is a relatively a new project for me. I think this is might be my fourth episode or so. So it's pretty new. And the whole idea is just to share people who started things themselves, like DIY, do it yourself.
Yeah, right.
Learn from them, hear their stories, like what works, what doesn't work, what does it really take to be successful in their own regards, what to look out for, and like what's their story, because I feel like there's so many bands and artists and musicians out there in the Philadelphia area or New Jersey or New York who are stuck and they want to know how to get better. How do I get my music heard? How do I make better records?
Yeah.
And everyone's caught in the same thing of like, what
Yeah,
the
that's
fuck do I
dope.
do? Because no one listens to me on Spotify. I get a few people at my show, but that's about it. It's like, where do I go from here and how do I
Yeah,
get
dude.
better? So
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm
Stagnancy
I'm just kind of
basically.
like curious, how do we break that and get better?
Yeah, that's a really like noble goal and pretty fucking selfless too. Like you're really not I'm sure you of course will benefit from it, but ultimately there will be way more people that benefit from this that beyond just you, and that you'll probably not even be directly
Thanks.
aware of. So like power
Thanks.
to you. And I admire that. Like it's kind of like a more uh all-encompassing big picture aspect of like what I'm trying to do. Because for me it's like,
Yeah, I hope so.
yeah, dude. And yeah, I'll like that's really cool, and I'll definitely try, do everything I can. Not try, I will do everything I can to like put this on and get some exposure.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. I mean, it does come down to too, like I'm in bands and I make music myself. So it's like, I don't know those answers. So hearing from you and
Hmm.
other people I interview is also good for my band too. Like where do we go from here? How do we
Yeah,
make the better record? So yeah.
right.
So yeah, I mean, I'll just end it like this. Like, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It was awesome. So cool talking to you.
Yeah, man. Thanks again. It's been a pleasure myself.
All right, man. Well, I wish you luck with
Yeah.
everything. And you got a lot of shit going for you, and hopefully that works out. It's like, especially the TV show
Yeah,
and the
dude.
app and everything. It's sick.
Yeah, dude. I really hope that TV show comes to fruition. Yeah, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks again for like taking your time out of your day. And yeah, if you're or when you find yourself back in the area, like totally feel free to reach out. If I have the free time, it'd be dope to link up in the flesh.
Hell yeah, for sure. Sounds good.
Cool, man. All right. Be easy.